Justice for All sent me this article, and I just want you to look at this heading right here on your screen because that's going to be the focus right there. I don't need to show you a picture or nothing like that. Just these words. From the start, Black Lives Matter has been about LGBTQ lives. 2 of 3 Black Lives Matter founders identify as queer. The article was written by Sony Salzman on June 21st, 2020. I, of course, recently did a video where I called it Darren Seals Warned Us, where I read the entire mission statement, about us section, and everything involving BLM. This article that I'm reading from is coming from abcnews.com. I guess you can say this is now their official coming out party, even though many of us already knew what their agenda was from the get-go. Maybe not at the grassroots level, but as time went on, we finally now know what they're really all about. And to be honest, it's very disingenuous. It's very off-putting, to be quite honest. Because when you think about it, they got started off of the bodies of dead black males who would identify as heterosexual. On their site, they don't mention anything about heterosexual men or fathers unless they are in a same-sex relationship. But they need strength off of dead black bodies who happen to be male in order to get their numbers up. So what they did was they called it Black Lives Matter when their agenda was the entire time was to put the academy at the forefront. But they couldn't get the numbers off of themselves alone because they were a very small group and they knew they wasn't going to get the support from their Caucasian counterparts. That just shows how divided they really and truly are. So call it Black Lives Matter, mask it as it meaning about everybody. But then when you get the numbers and the funding and you get everybody saying it, then you can say, well, now we don't need the heterosexuals anymore. We got it from here. But don't worry. Should one of you die by police brutality, we'll give you a call and you can come and rally with us again. And the cycle repeats. I hope that any of y'all out here who is going out there screaming Black Lives Matter, who is not a part of the academy, understands what the entire agenda was from the start. We were basically nothing but a stepping stone for them to get to where they really truly want. And now, like I said, they have the numbers. Now they are telling us what their true agenda was. But like I said, all you had to do was go onto the Black Lives Matter website and it would have told you right there what their intentions are and were and still are to this day. But this article was put out there now because some people now they feel like they can really tell the world what the intentions were from the get-go. But the sad part about it is a lot of people are going to bypass even this and still support it. If they're not even going to read the website where this information that I'm sure is in this article is displayed and has been on display for a few years now, then I know that they're not going to read this. Like they're telling on themselves and they're doing it very boastfully and proudly. But I'm going to read this article and see what else they're talking about, even though we pretty much already know what it's about. From the start, the founders of Black Lives Matter have always put the academy voices at the center of the conversation. Y'all hear that? At the center. That means at the core of the conversation. They said from the start. So that means ever since Trayvon Martin back in 2012, when it kicked off, if it wasn't 2012, maybe 2013, when it got kicked off from him, from the start, they were already ready to do that. This, when you think about it, BLM is nothing more than the black people in the academy's coming out party. This was their way of ushering themselves into society on a social level. But as you can see, it, like I said, they couldn't call it Black Gay Lives Matter or Black Lesbian Lives Matter or Black LGBTQ Lives Matter. They couldn't call it that because they wouldn't get the support. So call it Black Lives Matter, encompass everybody, get the numbers, get the funding. Then when you have everything you want, push the heterosexual people out of the way, and then censor yourselves. And then, like I said earlier, when they need you, they'll call you. And that will only happen when you are dead. I wasn't going to talk about this, but now that I'm fired up just on what I said on my own words, I can't wait to go forward and see what else I got to say about this. The movement was founded by 3 black women, Alicia Garza, Patrice Cullors, and Opal Tometi, 2 of whom identify as queer. And the thing is, they're going to go and push off of that too with the black woman thing, because 3 black women happen to do it, and 2 of them happen to be a part of that academy. They push that heavy, because they love to say, see, it's black women at the front lines. For the men, in their words, the cis heterosexual black men, what are they going to do for us? Well, you don't put us on your website to, say, support us or support the nuclear family. So what support are you asking for is what I'd like to know. By design, the movement they started in 2013 has remained organic, grassroots, and diffuse. Since then, many of the largest Black Lives Matter protests have been fueled by the violence against black men, including Mike Brown and Eric Garner in 2015, and now George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery. Now look at that. Most of it has been fueled by black men, the same black men that they do not acknowledge on their site at all, and actually speak against, because they love to talk about that word misogyny and patriarchy. I swear those 2 words, misogyny and patriarchy, are like kryptonite to the feminist. It is. They hate that word with a passion. But it's not only straight cisgendered black men who are dying at the hands of police. Last month, a black transgendered man, Tony McDade, age 38, was shot and killed by police in Tallahassee. On June 9th, 2 black transgender women, Raya Milton and Dominique Remy Fells, also were killed in separate acts of violence. Their killings believed to be the 13th and 14th of the transgender or gender non-conforming people this year. Now, here's the thing. They said 14th and 13th. 14th and 13th. Out of how many black men who actually identify as men and born as such have died at the hands of police brutality this year? Now, these 2 that they mentioned, and even, these 2 that they mentioned, who, minus the Tony McDade, because that was a person who was biologically born a woman and transformed, quote unquote, into a man. But the other 2, they were born a male and they, quote unquote, transformed into a woman. That's all I'm saying. And in 2019, Leyline Polanco, a trans Latina woman who was an active member of New York's ballroom community, died while in solitary confinement at Rikers Island Jail. It's crazy because they have these T-class members dying left and right, quote unquote, but they still can't even get their voices really out there. But they're supposed to be the center of this movement, quote unquote. If anything, it seems to me that black men are the center of the movement, but it's them that's getting shunned. And I hate to say this right here, but this is exactly why many people do not want women to lead a damn thing. I'm just being honest. And it doesn't even matter what you identify as. It doesn't even matter what your ethnic background is or how you choose to live your lifestyle. This is why many people do not like when women lead shit. Hell, even most women will agree that most women should not be in leadership roles. Some will even say they don't want any women in leadership roles because now you have stuff like this happening. It says we are a prime target because of our blackness and our intersectionality, another word that I despise, of being trans adds an extra target on our back, said Genovia Chase, a co-lead organizer of House Lives Matter, a community organization composed of sexual and gender minority people of color. Chase said that although Black Lives Matter was created by queer folks, cisgender privilege, basically those who identify as the sex that they were actually born as or heterosexual, has taken precedent over gay and transgender people. But look at what you started it on. I'm going to just come right out on and say it. Most of the world does not care about that community at all. Sure, they operate as a small group and they get some legislation passed, but guess what? It's mainly the white ones. I'm just going to be completely honest. And those in that community who are black, they know it too. All they're trying to do is they trying to get their piece of the pie. A huge piece of it at that. They better check. They better look in the mirror and check themselves. They ain't going to get a big piece of nothing. They've been doing all this for the last how many years, and they still don't even get any respect from their Caucasian counterparts. It says, while Chase and other Academy advocates of color clearly condemn the deaths of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and countless other cisgender black, and I hate that word too, black men, they're also quick to call attention to other acts of violence against black Academy people that garner less national media attention. They often point to Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, a trans woman of color, who helped kickstart the Academy rights movement following the Stonewall Uprising of the 1960s, only to watch as many hard-fought rights and privileges benefited white gay men and women, but weren't extended to people like them. And to this day, it's still pretty much the same thing. Now I see why they really push it out there, because this is their way of trying to compete, I guess you can say, combat against them. As far as if something happens to them and everything like that. Basically, they want people to be outraged how people were when they killed Matthew Shepard. If y'all are old enough to remember the Matthew Shepard situation, that pretty much garnered a lot of media attention. I think it's because, one, well, because he was a white boy, and two, it was still taboo for you to be a part of that community. It's not like it's full blown as it is right now. So that's, I think, another reason why it blew up the way that it did. Or when or with Jeffrey Dahmer, even though he got exactly what he deserved, that was a sick individual all the way around. And some other stories, but of course those were white males who just happened to be a part of that academy. And like I said, what it seems to me is what they're doing with BLM is they're trying to compete for outrage, or who can be outraged more for them. That is what it's telling to me. It's another example about how the black queer community has been in the forefront, leading. However, we're not being seen, heard, or valued. Now here's the kicker. Here's the interesting thing about this whole thing. They claim that they did this and had the academy be the center of this movement, but it only gets attention with black heterosexual men get killed, is when they really come out in droves. And then I be seeing online, you have some of these divestors saying, ladies, let's stop marching for these men. They don't care about us. I said, but then turn right around and have their bored asses out there, quote unquote, protesting. Some of them don't even go out and do that. I don't know if y'all saw that video or not, but I think it was in Atlanta or something like that. You had this black woman out there twerking like she was at the goddamn strip club in front of a police car. And when people try to tell her about herself, you have people in the comment section say, don't tell her how she can protest. If that's how she want to protest, let her. You misogynistic pig. I'm like, I didn't know twerking was a form of protest, but okay. Maybe in Stragville. Okay. If that's the case, all right. They said, however, organizers say there are clear signs times are changing and that black academy voices are increasingly taking center stage in nationwide conversations about race discrimination and police violence. In recent weeks, people have turned out in never before seen numbers to support the academy community of color and especially black transgender people. Last week in Brooklyn, an estimated 15,000 people turned out for a demonstration called the Black Trans Lives Matter Rally, aka Brooklyn Liberation, making it one of the largest transgender-focused protests in history, according to the organizers. In Los Angeles, tens of thousands more gathered in Hollywood for the All Black Lives Matter protest, intended to be inclusive and centered on Academy members of BLM. But they claim all Black Lives Matter, but only if you fall in the academy. Only if you are in the academy. It's funny, the thing's called Black Lives Matter, and you would think it would encompass everybody, even if you decide to live that lifestyle, but they literally decided to divide themselves. within a movement. And the thing is, I think they're also doing this because they're trying to get legislation passed that is specifically for them, sort of like how the white ones have done. I think that's what they're trying to do. This is their way of getting into Congress and the government's face with this. I think that's the other thing that's going on too. Even though they have so much funding and have been getting funding, even dating back to years when they couldn't even get married legally. I told people it's going to be a domino effect. It's going to start at one thing and then it's going to lead to another and another and another. And then, here we are right now. And on Juneteenth, to celebrate the day the last enslaved people were informed of their freedom, celebrations across the country saw intersectional, there's that word again, celebrations of the Black experience in the United States. In Harlem and New York City, hundreds gathered for a massive celebration of music and art intended to lift up and center Black, queer, and trans folks in an event co-organized by the Blacksmiths Intersectional Voices Collective and the Wide Awakes. More people are also becoming educated and intentional at this moment, said Niyama Safia Sandy, who's on the steering committee of the Blacksmiths, a coalition of artists, curators, culture producers, and organizers committed to Black liberation and equality. It's not just possible to turn a blind eye away from these things anymore. Clad in face masks and handing out hand sanitizer, hundreds turned out to dance, sing, and march along historic Black landmarks on a hot day in Harlem. Eventually, the parade-like crowd landed at St. Nicholas Park, where members of New York City's ballroom community greeted protesters with elaborate voguing performances, a dancing style born in the queer ballroom scene that has been since popularized by Madonna, Rihanna, and Ariana Grande. It's rare that we get opportunities to come together as a Black community and specifically center the trans and queer community, said Chase, who helped organize the Juneteenth celebration in Harlem. And I just scrolled down here and I see a picture right here of one of the people in that academy who is a guy, and he literally has on female attire while not actually dressed like completely head to toe like a woman. Like he has on shorts, this very tight shirt, and some heels. During one performance, model and poet Linda LaBehaja, a member of the house ballroom community, read a spoken word poem called Vogue Bitch to a thunderous crowd of more than 300 people. How many of those beacons of light must we lose along the way? LaBehaja asked the crowd, referring to the Black trans women who have been victims of violence. And as Black Lives Matter protesters continue to remember George Floyd and others killed at the hands of police, LaBehaja asked, are you including Black trans women in that list of Black names? See what I mean when I tell you they literally created something to supposedly encompass all of us, but then here comes the divide right there. Like I said, I haven't been on this BLM train in years. At first, like I said, at this grassroots level, before we really figured out what they were doing, I was like, I was like saying and everything like that. But then when you learn about what their true intentions were, yeah, then Darren Seals came out, God rest his soul, and you see what happened with him, because he saw what for what it was and he started calling it out. But see, he was in the way, and he was calling it out early before they really, really revved up. And they couldn't afford anyone to really blow their cover. But see, now you can speak freely about this thing because now it's out in the open. As a Black transgender woman, Deja Smith said they learned the hard way how difficult life can be for people like them in the United States. It's been a struggle for most of the way here, said Smith, a founding member of the Intersectional Voices Collective and director of makeup artistry of DD Pro. But over the last 3 to 5 years, things have started to ease up, leading to this moment today where I just thought I would never see a crowd of Black, queer, and trans people of like minds getting along and speaking to our ancestry. Smith credits the founders of Black Lives Matter for creating a space for Academy voices from the start. It has always been part of their cultural movement. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Their whole trick bag has now been dumped out onto the floor. Now the whole world knows what their intentions were. My question to you is, for those of you who are still following, will you still continue to follow? Because if you don't really mesh with that community, everything that they're doing is not going to satisfy you. They pretty much laid it out right there. that they don't care about anybody else but themselves, but call themselves Black Lives Matter to pretend that they give a damn about everybody. Meanwhile, on their site, they talk about black women, children, the academy. Hell, they even talk about, when they say intersectional, they even include illegal immigrants. I saw that in there somewhere, but nowhere in it are they talking about black men, heterosexual black men. Although it was founded on the deceased bodies of heterosexual black males, boys, and grown men. Like I said, a true and utter slap in the face. But you know what? At least it's best to know now rather than later what their intentions were the entire time.